Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the T.H.O. Movie Reviews podcast, the show where we bring you passionate, honest, and insightful film criticism. I'm your host, Bennett, Campbell, Ferguson. I am joined today by my colleague, Jim Newman, and we are going to talk about the Oscars. We picked out a couple categories to talk about today. Any category you don't hear about today, you can hear about in the second part of this podcast. We will do some analysis, some predictions, some general movie-related musing, I would imagine.
Movie-related musing. I like the phrase.
My mom's a fan of alliteration. She passed it down to me, and it's just, bam, in the psyche for life now.
You could almost put it to music.
And yeah, without further ado, let's just dive in. I'll read off the nominees in each of the categories we're talking about. Let's start with one of the big ones. Let's start with Best Director. So we have for Black Klansman, Spike Lee. For Cold War, Pavel Pawlikowski. For The Favorite, Yorgos Lanthimos. For Roma, Alfonso Cuarón. And for Vice, Adam McKay. I'll give the floor to you in a sec, Jim, but this is, to me, my favorite Oscar category, so I'll get a couple things off my chest really quick. First of all, it gives me hope for humanity that the directors of A Star Is Born and Green Book were shut out, and instead we have nominated, in the spot that probably would have gone to one of them, a Polish director of a black and white period piece shot in a really old-fashioned aspect ratio. That just warms my heart. And also, the other thing I would say is, I think, we got a couple really impressive directors in here, but I think it's probably Cuarón's to lose for a number of reasons we'll get into. But also, I don't know if you've seen Vice, but to be honest, I do not think McKay should have been nominated. I don't think his work on this was nearly as compelling as what he did on The Big Short. But what do you think? Are there any contenders on this list that you have strong feelings about? Anyone you think either should win or will win?
Wow, I can mainly come at it from the strong feeling of what I don't like. And I liked the movie Black Klansman quite a lot.
I liked it as well.
Thought it's really an appealing movie. And is it David George Washington or George David?
John David Washington. Son of Denzel Washington.
Yeah, son of Denzel.
Great performance.
That man is so appealing. He just radiates this certain kind of energetic charm.
Yeah, real charisma and heroism.
Yes, and I guess that must be genetic because of his dad, or
his dad
I don't know.
The same thing.
Yeah, that you would have that. But Spike Lee does some things in this movie that drove me crazy when I was watching it. Such as there's a scene where everyone is in a bar, and Spike Lee evidently wanted to show how beautiful the characters are, how appealing they were. So he did something called vignetting them, where he sort of limbo-lit specific individuals, and then...
I'd forgotten all about that till you mentioned that. The images are coming back now.
And that bothered me to no end, because it is such a painfully artificial way to show, yes, that these are beautiful people. There's no question about that.
Is that in the scene where Kwame Ture is speaking as the faces in the audience, or is it?
Yeah. I think its exact placement in the film has slipped my mind.
I haven't seen the film since it opened in August, so I can't remember. Right?
But I remember being very much put off by that. And then there is another scene, and unfortunately, his name is skipping my mind too at the moment. The individual who had the hit song Deo back in the day, This
Oh.
is...
I can't remember either.
Yeah. Anyway, he's talking about the horrors of the past. And truly,
Yeah.
it does give Spike Lee the
Oh,
opportunity.
I know what you're thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, it does give Spike Lee the opportunity to underscore just how horrific racism really is.
Doesn't he intercut like that scene with the scenes of the Klansmen, you know?
Yeah,
doing their thing,
planning, or
watching-
having a meeting or whatever they're doing.
But it's not when they're watching Birth of a Nation, right? That's later. That might be later. Yeah,
It might be later.
I'm going off on a tangent. Continue.
Well, all I'm saying is it felt clunky to insert that set of scenes into the narrative, even though the information that Spike Lee managed to get to the audience by doing that is good information to have.
Sure.
It nevertheless marred the narrative, and he, I would think, would have his first obligation to making sure that that is a movie that is something that coheres as a piece of entertainment,
Yes.
ultimately.
Yeah.
And he did not do that, and it bothers me that he chose to make that decision.
Well, you bring up a lot of interesting things, and I think, it brings up a couple things I want to say, which is that first of all, Spike Lee was not nominated for an Oscar for Do the Right Thing, and
Where
I think
he probably should have.
he certainly should have been nominated. He possibly even should have won that year. That film was just an extraordinary achievement. And so, this is actually crazy as it seems for a filmmaker who is one of the most iconic directors of our time. He has never been nominated for Best Director before. So certainly I can get behind the nomination as a recognition of a really extraordinary career. I do, however, have some issues with Black Klansmen, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I actually kind of have the opposite problem with the movie, which is I think the scenes you're describing are sort of stylistic exceptions where he's doing kind of sort of using wild attention-getting techniques.
Yeah, they are that.
Yeah,
Yes.
but outside those scenes, not politically but stylistically, I actually think this is an oddly conservative movie. It's oddly kind of straightforward and formulaic. Kind of dealing with these complex issues, but then positioning them in this sort of buddy cop drama and using these cliches, like the cliche of the love interest who the main character has a secret from, or the bomb plot at the end, which I believe did not happen in real life. And it's he's absolutely entitled to take some creative license, but that ending scene where he brings everything full circle and he shows the footage of, from Charlottesville. He shows, Trump's very fine people remarks about white supremacists. I really like that, he brings this period piece, he ties it into the present. But, I actually wish the film had, more brash and bold moments like that. I think, it's in a weird way, it's sort of a tame movie at times. It's bold, but it could have been bold, I think,
And I wonder if Spike Lee as a director might have peaked somewhere decades ago with those early films, like She's Gotta Have It, and I guess there are maybe two or three others that
Sure, yeah.
Really knocked the socks off people at the time, but I have seen some of his work that ended up on streaming services that struck me as amateurish even.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess he might deserve some commendation for having a great career where he did achieve so much. But that makes me think of, in the world of fiction writing, Ken Kesey wrote 2 great novels, and then everything after that was really marginal at best. And it feels like that happens to artists sometimes.
Oh yeah, and certainly he's not the only director that's happened to. Whit Stillman, who made Metropolitan, which is my favorite comedy of all time. That was his first film. Everything else has fallen short. Everything. Not that everything since then has been bad, but it just hasn't been on that level. And I think that's the reality. And before we move on, I think the only thing I would add about this category is, in general, if Spike Lee won, I'd be happy because he's Spike Lee.
Me too, kinda. Yeah,
but not
he probably
necessarily
deserves
this particular film, And
Adam McKay, I agree with you. Vice is certainly entertaining in the same way that a docudrama would be entertaining on television. I don't know that there was anything remarkable necessarily about that film as such.
Yes, I don't know that there is either. And in fact, I really think, and it's a shame it's nominated for Best Editing, because the pace is so fast and it tries to cram so much information in. I think you really never get a sense of, who these people are. And I think one of the worst scenes in the film is where Dick Cheney appears to decide, almost like on a whim, that he's a Republican. And it's like, I don't know, perhaps that happened in real life, but the movie really has no sense of ideology or sort of, why people think the way they think. And I think most politicians, they choose their party for very specific reasons, and that ideology, comes out of very specific things. I mean, it was the same thing with the Gary Hart film, The Frontrunner, which I think is also quite terrible, and no sense of his beliefs or his convictions or what he stood for. It just, it's just observing events unfold, and I don't know. I think I'm definitely a political junkie, and I'm waiting for the next great political movie because it hasn't happened.
Yeah, and it isn't Vice. I mean, my takeaway, the one thing I guess I would comment about if I were at a party having seen Vice is Christian Bale gaining a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Or wearing a fat suit. I'm not sure which it was.
And I don't even think it's that great a performance. I think
it's very deadpan. It's flat, but that is the character if you're imitating Dick Cheney.
But he's also like, it felt like a bit like he was doing the Batman voice, which I'll defend the Batman voice till my dying day, but I don't necessarily want Dick Cheney to talk in the Batman voice.
I don't know if I cannot distinguish between my feelings about Amy Adams generally and her performance, but my interest in the film spiked whenever she was on screen because I felt like she really seemed like Dick Cheney's wife. I mean, she really seemed like a Republican.
She was brilliant, yeah.
There goes that.
It's all good. One thing that I thought was interesting was A.O. Scott in his review of the film. He said he talked about the movie like kind of subscribing to a negative great man theory of history, and he said instead of suggesting that behind every great man is a great woman, he said it's about how behind every bad man is an even worse woman. And
that is a great line.
And also I think in the judging by the film, behind every bad man is a woman who's bad in a more interesting way, because I was a lot more interested in her character.
I thought, and again, what is your opinion? Was it Amy Adams' performance, or was it some other reason? I mean, maybe that theory. that a powerful woman engineers a really bad man into position or something.
Yeah.
Or was it Amy Adams as an actress, would you say, that made you care about her or think of her in that way? Maybe you can't tease it out. I don't know.
No, I think it's a good question, and I think that, I'll be honest, I've said I said I don't like this film, but that's actually not quite true. I in fact loathe this film with every fiber of my being, and I think it's the worst film nominated for Best Picture this year.
Oh my God!
Even worse than Green Book, and let me tell you, that's saying something.
Wow!
But I'm loath to give anyone behind the camera credit on this what I think is a total misguided mess. Honestly, I think anything that worked with that character is down to Amy Adams. I think honestly they handed her what looks to me like a really atrocious script, and I think she was able to momentarily turn some sludge into poetry, and that that great little speech she gives where she's saying in Wyoming, we don't burn our bras, we wear them. I think that works because of her, and I think
okay, that's good. That kind of coincides with my feeling that whenever I see her on screen, and I don't know what the alchemy might be that makes her register so powerfully in my mind when I see her, but she does register powerfully.
Oh, she does, and she's she's one of the greatest living actors, I think.
That
and
case
she's
can
due
be
for
made.
an Oscar.
Yeah, well, I wonder. Of all of these people, and maybe you don't want to go in that direction, but I think that's an interesting question.
Actually, should we move on? Let's move on
sure,
to acting.
Absolutely.
I want us to. Since we have a lot to get through, I want to talk about all the actresses, lead and supporting nominated in one go. So I'll read them off. Actress in a leading role, Yalitza Aparicio, hope I'm pronouncing that right, for Roma, this is leading role. Glenn Close for The Wife, Olivia Colman for The Favorite, Lady Gaga for A Star Is Born, Melissa McCarthy for Can You Ever Forgive Me, and for supporting, Amy Adams for Vice, Marina de Tavira for Roma, Regina King for Beale Street Could Talk, Emma Stone for The Favorite, Rachel Weisz for The Favorite. Of all of these, I think the names that excite me the most, I haven't seen a couple of these films, but I really like the two Roma actresses who are nominated. I think they're absolutely astonishing. I think Emma Stone is really extraordinary in The Favorite, and I think the level of all the different calculations happening in the mind of that character registers so beautifully and entertainingly in her performance. I don't think she's going to win. I kind of wish she would win. But that's a performance that stands out to me. I guess my feeling right now is that Glenn Close seems to be taking a lot of the big awards for The Wife. She's got a SAG award. I would bet that she's going to win. For supporting actress, seems like there's a lot of moment for Regina King, but that's a harder category to call. I'm guessing you're rooting for Melissa McCarthy, but do you have any feelings about who will win in either of these categories?
Wow, I guess if I had to guess who's going to win, I would say just because of the buzz and because everybody really seems to be profoundly affected as opposed to necessarily liking the movie The Favorite, I would say Olivia Colman for Best Actress, even though in my personal estimation, I would rather see Melissa McCarthy make it because I think if one were to edit out and put on a reel of very cool performances, Melissa McCarthy's courtroom scene in that movie, Can You Ever Forgive Me, it would be right up there with some of the finest acting anyone has ever done in the history of film. I know that that's hyperbole, but the fact is, that's how I feel about that.
If the phrase is warranted, it ain't hyperbole.
Yeah, but you know, when I saw The Wife with Glenn Close.
Yeah, how was The Wife? I still haven't checked it out.
I don't think it's a great movie. The plot doesn't necessarily hold up very well.
Well, you know what's odd? It seems like most people don't think it's a great movie. You know, I can't think of anyone who I've read or, talked to who really loves The Wife. It's just this odd confluence of factors where Glenn Close almost overnight became, certainly a front runner, if not the one to beat.
There's something, and I'm going to try to see if I can explain this, because I thought it when I saw it, that there's a phenomenon that may not occur in any actor's career ever, but did occur for Glenn Close in The Wife. Mm-hmm. And that is almost scene for scene throughout the length of the entire film. Every shot of her makes her look not just beautiful, but almost powerful in the sense of being a monument. Mm-hmm. I mean, someone who is bigger and better and more profound than life itself. You'd have to watch it to see that it's magnificent. It would be a calling card. If I had a reel...
Is it better for as a showcase for her than
yes.
as a movie itself?
Oh, my God, yes.
Which is true of a lot of movies nominated for acting awards. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Every musical biopic under the sun.
Here's the spoiler. Do you mind if I do a spoiler
No.
on The Wife? Okay. It's about a man, the husband of the wife, and
played by Jonathan Pryce, right?
Yes, and he is going to get the Nobel Prize for fiction. Mm-hmm. And it turns out through the course of the movie that Jonathan Pryce did not write his Nobel quality work. She did. That's the big reveal at the end of the movie. So it's hackneyed. It doesn't really hold up. You mean for her entire life, and she has a son who desperately wants to be a writer, but she never shares with him that this man who is stonewalling his own son about being a writer didn't write a word. I mean, it just seems cloying and awkward and untruthful what would likely be the facts on the ground.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that couldn't happen.
It could.
But it certainly strains credulity.
Well, and what would be just...
It sounds like... It sounds like... Well, I mean, it sounds like that movie Colette with Keira Knightley, which of course takes place a long time ago.
I recently read a book about writing drama, and they say that there are transitions that the writer is obligated to convince, every step of the way, convince the audience that the next step is logical.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And in The Wife, that doesn't happen. I mean, it leaps across all kinds of necessary transitions where someone could actually buy into the theory.
Interesting.
That the wife wrote all these great novels and let the credit go to this, pompous older man. Yeah, I agree. It could happen, but it wasn't convincing in this film.
Gotcha.
And so the whole movie falls apart, and the appeal of the wife, she's nominally the hero here. See, she suffered in silence,
sure,
except that she's hurt a lot of people by doing this, namely her own flesh and blood.
Sure.
Her own child who desperately wants to be what his father is, mm-hmm, really wants to be what his mother was, and she coldly ignored him and didn't act very motherly, I would say, destroying this boy. If you want to look at it that way, that's one of the flaws of the movie. And so, why go through that tortuous little drama? And so, I think it hurts. I don't think she'll win because of that.
Really?
I really don't think she will. She looks beautiful on screen. She does an amazing job, too. She is a very good actress. But I think that movie is lame, and it doesn't serve her well that it's lame.
I think, I think certainly, like, those things will come into play, but it could be that the voters...
Well, maybe
think of it like think of the performance as distinct from the film itself. I mean,
if they do that then she has a
case.
chance because she just lights up the screen on every frame that she's in. It's really amazing.
Well, let's talk about the two screenplay categories. So for adapted screenplay, we got The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Black Klansman, Can You Ever Forgive Me, If Beale Street Could Talk, and A Star Is Born. For original screenplay, we have The Favorite, First Reformed, Green Book, Roma, and Vice. This gives me an opportunity to talk about a film that I think should have gotten more nominations. I'm very happy that Paul Schrader is nominated for his writing on First Reformed, but it's also, I think, depressing that a film that engrossing and hypnotic and beautifully crafted is only recognized in this one category, and I think it's a shame. Ethan Hawke really, I think, should have been nominated for Best Actor, but I guess, when I look at these categories, I think certainly, Green Book was going to come up at some point, so we can delve into some of the ugliness surrounding that movie. Probably not all of it because there's so much of it, but the nominees for writing Green Book are Nick Vallelonga, Brian Curry, and Peter Farrelly. Peter Farrelly, it was reported a while back, exposed himself to Cameron Diaz. And Nick Vallelonga, who is the son of the character portrayed by Viggo Mortensen in the film, he has kind of withdrawn from the awards circuit, for our listeners who don't know, because it was found that he made a tweet a while back sort of approving of Donald Trump's false claim that there were Muslims cheering in New Jersey after the Twin Towers fell.
Oh, no.
And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so, Green Book, in spite of all this awfulness, has certainly been a big awards winner. But I am hoping in my heart of hearts that the Academy doesn't want to offer or doesn't want to honor awful guys like that. And I think original screenplay, I think this is an opportunity to recognize The Favorite, which, Roma's a great screenplay as well, but of the two Best Picture nominees in here, The Favorite is the one where the dialogue stands out, and I think, screenplay awards, I think the voters do tend to focus on dialogue. The other factors, maybe get shunted aside a bit. I think they think screenplays, they think words that actors say, and I think to put it crudely, that movie certainly has the best words.
Well, and it's out of whole cloth. Apparently, it isn't a reliable history of the time or Queen Anne.
And perhaps why it succeeds is because it's not trying to be. It gives itself
it's its own entity, and it stands alone. And I like it because it has the vibe of a classic, even though, of course, it isn't one. It just feels like it has the heft. It has the power to stand the test of time, but of
Yes.
course,
Yeah.
that's an impression at the moment, and I could easily be wrong, but that's how it felt to me when I saw it.
I agree. I mean, I think because I don't think anyone who watches that movie comes out like thoroughly, understanding it top to bottom. I think this is a movie people will be watching and kind of wrestling with for years because there's a lot to tease out in there.
Yeah, and that's a really cool thing when you leave a theater or the movie has ended and you cannot really get it out of your mind because you realize in some way you're still processing it.
Sure.
You're trying to figure it out. Why? You must have cared a little bit.
Yeah,
You must
absolutely.
have really been touched on some level. Now, I did not see Green Book. I intended to see it, and you're going to have to pronounce his name for me again.
Oh, Mahershala Ali.
Mahershala?
Yes.
Mahershala.
Very well done. Well done.
Thank you, Mahershala Ali. I love that guy. I think that
Yeah.
he is terrific.
Oh, he always delivers. Yeah.
But what I heard from people who saw it is that beware of this movie because it's really the experience of a black man in this culture, but it's written from a white perspective.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's true. I mean, certainly it's true. It's literally true, given that the script was written by white guys.
Yeah.
But I think also in the sense that this is a movie, and this is really horrible, and I think it's true. It's a movie essentially about a white guy teaching a black guy how to be black.
Oh, that's painful.
It is. It's painful to watch. I mean, you literally have scenes where Viggo Mortensen is teaching Mahershala Ali to enjoy jazz and fried chicken.
Oh, shut up.
I mean, it's just
That is horrible.
I mean, it is. And I feel so infuriated by the people who say things like, why are you picking on Green Book? It's a nice movie. It's like, no, it's not a nice movie. It is a violently racist movie. It is a movie that I think wants to put black people in their place, and I think it's kind of telling that Viggo Mortensen in the film is Mahershala Ali's chauffeur, but at the end of the film he falls asleep and Mahershala Ali ends up driving him. He quite literally becomes the servant at the end, and this is a movie that's really, I think, I mean, it just subscribes to some, I think, really nauseating stuff.
When do you think that will change? I mean, here's a movie that nominally is supposed to bring the culture closer together in terms of race, to foster an understanding between the races.
Yeah.
And this kind of cliche behavior still goes on where the white person in the narrative is predominant,
Yeah.
Do you suppose it's going to be the 2030s or the 2040s before that ceases to happen? I mean, there's a blind spot.
Yeah.
It feels like in this culture where that kind of thing gets embraced and gets nominated for the Academy Award, everybody pats themselves on the back. Well, after all, one of the stars is a black man.
Right. I mean, honestly, I mean, I think, when I was a kid, I would have, I mean, I think naively, as a, white kid, growing up in a sort of, very comfortable middle class liberal world, I think I would have, naively predicted that things would be much better than they are by now.
Right.
Now, I mean, at this point,
we know better.
I think I would never underestimate how bad things can get. I mean, honestly, I hate to say this, and I hope it won't be true. I could picture another movie in the vein of Green Book, making a lot of money even in 20 years.
Oh, that is a sad prediction.
It is, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but it's just, I don't know. It's just the way things are going. It's easy to be cynical, But I mean, I I see a lot of great filmmakers fighting back against that. You said you were talking about blind spots. Blind Spotting, I think, is one of the best films of the year. It's on my top 10 list, and that's a film. It was written by the two stars, Daveed Diggs and Raphael Casal. Daveed Diggs is black. Raphael Casal is white. That's a film that deals with how black people and white people relate to each other in a very, very tough, to my mind, authentic way. And I certainly hope we're going to see more of that. I mean, a movie like that, I think, could not have been made a couple decades ago.
What is the name of that movie? Tell me about
Blind
that.
Spotting.
Blind Spotting. Was this a theatrical release movie?
It was, but unfortunately it was, despite certainly being a critical favorite, it never, really got a lot of momentum. It's a really incredible story. It's kind of it's really about gentrification in Oakland. Daveed Diggs plays this guy. He was, unjustly incarcerated. He's on his last week of probation, but his loose cannon white friend, played by Casal, keeps screwing things up, for him, kind of making mischief, causing trouble, getting up to kind of crazy, violent schemes, and it's really about the relationship between these two guys, and are they gonna survive in this increasingly gentrified world that they're in? And the interesting thing is that it sort of explores the idea that the Raphael Casal character, even though he's a white guy who certainly, to say the least, has all the advantages that come with white privilege. It explores how he's affected by the gentrification as well. He's a working class guy working for a moving company, and these fancy pants people are coming in drinking green juices, and he's feeling the effects of that as well. And it really explores kind of a changing community through the eyes of both men in a powerful way. And I mean, we're talking about screenplays. I mean, those guys should have been nominated for their writing, because their writing and their acting is equally extraordinary. And I recommend that film to anyone who likes movies or is concerned about the things it's dealing with.
And the funny thing about Green Book is that it veers away. It's nominally about this black jazz pianist, but my understanding now, I haven't seen it, so I am giving you this information secondhand, which is not fair, especially on a podcast. I understand that. But one of the reasons I didn't go see it was because I was assured by people who did see it and were offended by it that ultimately the movie veers away from the black experience whenever the perspective of the white guy could not know what was happening to the black person.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, the black guy gets arrested at one point, and then it stays with the white guy because he doesn't know what's going on with the black guy. How dare that happen in this movie?
Yeah. It's a black man's story, kind of through the prism of a white guy.
Yeah, thank you very much. As if we haven't seen that 5 billion times since the old days of Disney and Brer Rabbit, know?
It's nauseating. I do, we have a couple more categories to get, so I shouldn't go on about this for too long. But one thing I do want to add is that the movie isn't just racist. I mean, it's offensive on other levels as well, and I would hope that most men in general would be offended by it, because it's not just about the horrible idea of a white guy teaching a black guy to be black. It's also about a heterosexual man teaching a gay man to toughen up, and it's also about a gay man teaching a heterosexual man to be sensitive and write love letters.
Oh,
and it's like,
yeah,
you know,
you're talking about cliche on top of cliche.
I mean, you know, it's like that's, it's like, I don't know, I don't see how anyone could not be offended by that. I mean, it's like, I mean, you know, and I don't often say this, but I take offense to that as a heterosexual man who, you know, at least who considers himself to be quite good at writing letters.
Yeah,
you know?
right,
I mean,
right.
It's like the whole movie is about let's sort everyone into their neat little stereotypical boxes and keep them there as much as possible.
Now, the fact that this movie is up for the Academy Award, would you say that was Hollywood pandering to the culture at large?
Yes.
And not really educating anyone?
Yes, yeah. I mean,
play into the comfort zone.
I mean, it just seems like, you know, and I feel that, you know, like a lot of this movie seems like it's designed, you know, to give white viewers, you know, an excuse to pat themselves in the back and be like, you know, look how much better things have gotten. Oh,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. No,
I think it's very much pandering, and it is really kind of funny to see that and Black Klansmen up against each other. You know, I mean, you know, two very different, you know, visions.
You know, by contrast, I would like to say nicer things about If Beale Street Could Talk than I can. That movie ends up being interminable for the last third, or maybe the last 20% or something like that. It doesn't have a third act. Unfortunately, it becomes tedious. It starts out great, I thought.
Yeah.
You know, there's some really powerful James Baldwin type dialogue at the beginning of that movie, and I made a mental note because I have a friend that we talk on the phone. He lives in Minneapolis. Whenever there's a strong movie about racial issues, we discuss it. And so I made a mental note when I was about 20% into If Beale Street Could Talk. And I got to call Willie and let him know how great it is. And that just, by the time the movie was over, that dissipated. It wasn't there anymore.
The movie talked you out of making that call.
Yeah, because the dramatic tension evaporated. I don't know if that's because of a weakness in the novel or why, but it's strange to me that it got nominated as potentially the best adapted screenplay when it's got such an obvious flaw in the dramatic development throughout the film.
Well, it is a flawed screenplay, I think, and I'm of two minds. I do like the film, but, and this is a big but, I'm flabbergasted by the number of people I've met who are like, you know, oh, I like it, it's so much better than Moonlight. It's like,
what?
I know, I mean, to me
Wrong.
That is heresy, you know, because Moonlight is a movie that feels like that movie
feels
just
true.
It feels true. Every moment of that film feels honest. And while I do like a lot of things about Beale Street, I feel like it has the whiff of. It feels like you're watching actors acting. It never feels entirely seamless. There's an air of artificialness that clings to the movie, and I think for that reason I would have to agree with you. I don't think I could. I mean, I wouldn't nominate it for Best Adapted Screenplay because I think that artificialness. I think that starts with the script. I think the script feels a little studied, a little Hollywoodish. You know, like the when they're shopping for a new apartment, and you know the guy showing them around, you know, says, you know, everyone's good with me as long as people love each other. It's like that. I do think that's a moving scene, but it feels so phony and staged, you know, compared to what Barry Jenkins did when he directed Moonlight. You know, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's a flawed movie to say the least.
Well, and this might originate with a novel that the narrative follows a man who's unjustly imprisoned in this culture. No big surprise because he's a black guy. And so the struggle throughout the film is to get him out of jail.
Yes.
But the novel, Baldwin's novel, obviously does not end with him being free. I mean, I say obviously, I mean that's the implication, because in the movie he ends up still in prison. Well, that leaves the drama with nowhere to go. It's like ultimately he's in prison about halfway through the film, and he's going to stay there. And so whatever happens is kind of peripheral to the horror of whatever the hell is going on with this poor individual behind bars.
Well, do you think they should have showed what was happening?
Well, yes, I do, but
okay.
the screenplay doesn't do that. I think probably the Baldwin novel doesn't go there.
Yeah.
And the Baldwin family, and this is hearsay, the Baldwin family evidently had a lot to do with permitting this film to be made, because they have the copyright on all that material. So maybe they were in control and said, we demand that you, and I don't know this for sure, I don't know this as a fact, that maybe the family said, you must follow the novel totally religiously, and therefore Barry Jenkins had no option but to tap dance to the end of the movie with no real further development once the guy's in prison. So he's left with what? Showing that the family retains its love. That is, the imprisoned fellow and his wife are still in love, and they have a child, and he loves his father and his mother. Well, that's good, but it's static.
Gotcha.
There is no conflict. There is no advancement at all. All they do is show that love, and it gets tedious after a while.
I think I was less bothered with the staticness, because I feel like the kind of the excursion to Puerto Rico and the flashbacks, they help like kind of offset that.
A little bit, yeah.
But I think it's certainly it's a flawed movie. It's not what I would have chosen for that category myself. Let's talk about our final two categories. First, we have we're gonna combine cinematography and editing together. For cinematography, Cold War, we have Lucas Zal. For The Favorite, Robbie Ryan. For Never Look Away, Caleb Deschanel. For Roma, Alfonso Cuarón. For A Star Is Born, Matthew Liberty. And then for editing, for Black Klansman, Barry Alexander Brown. For Bohemian Rhapsody, John Ottman. For The Favorite, I'm probably going to mispronounce this really badly, but it looks like Yorgos Mavrosaridis. For Green Book, Patrick J. Don Vito. And for Vice, Hank Corwin. I have to do a quick PSA. At least, I always feel like with editing, the editor is directly responsible for the quality of the film. Doesn't matter how good, anything else is. The editor is the one who's going to ultimately decide, can what's been shot be assembled into, a piece of art. And so I've been dismayed to see that the Academy makes what I think is the ridiculous choice of nominating films for Best Editing that aren't nominated for Best Picture, which is crazy to me. I mean, doing things like nominating Star Wars: The Force Awakens for Best Editing, that's absurd, I think. I'm happy to see that all these editing nominees are, in fact, nominated for Best Picture, but I would say that, I think Vice certainly should have been nominated for reasons we talked about. Bohemian Rhapsody being nominated is weird to me. In fact, it's weird to me that that's nominated for Best Picture as well, because I don't know about you, but for me, like, that was a really kind of extraordinarily underwhelming film. I mean, I think it doesn't. I mean, you were talking about the James Baldwin estate, and speculating that perhaps Barry Jenkins had his hands tied a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that was even more the case perhaps with Bohemian Rhapsody, which is, very much a whitewashed PG-13 take on a guy who did not live a PG-13 life.
Yeah, apparently had quite a debauched last number of years in his life.
Yeah.
Very much into adventuresome sex of whatever sorts. And I didn't know that, and really, I guess that was quite a criticism that a lot of people had. In terms of editing, the only way that I can come at that is to think about the montage of scenes when they are at this rural recording studio, which looks very much like a farm.
Yes, yeah.
And they are putting together what became the 6-minute hit record, Bohemian Rhapsody. I know, and I thought that was well edited.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder if the Academy at large, and it's really, I think, hard to tell what the raw footage was that any editor has to work with.
That's true, because we can only know the finished product.
Right.
So we have
it's really a judgment call. Was that a good edit, or was that just a director that knew what he was doing and gave him the perfect stuff? It's hard to tell.
Sure.
But with Bohemian Rhapsody, the part where they move through the complexities and the unlikely choices and the strength of Freddie Mercury's vision, at least as it's presented in the movie, it's his vision, that it became this great song. Well, that, if you take that out of the movie and just present it, you still get it. It's an excellent sense of creative motion. It just moves right on through. And for that reason, I understand why the film itself is up for Best Editor.
Well, I will say this, the editor, John Ottman, who is also a composer, incidentally, it's the only editor/composer I can think of. I do think he is one of the best editors working today, and I've seen other films he's edited, and I've always been impressed. I mean, I don't like this film, but I mean, judging by the behind-the-scenes drama, which is, I'm sure, very familiar to most of our listeners now, it's perhaps a miracle that the film was ever completed at all. So, I mean, the editing, may very well be a significant achievement considering what everyone was up against. I mean, as far as, who's going to win Best Editing, I mean, the cynical part of me wants to say Vice, because certainly that has the showiest editing, but I would hope that something else would win.
I mean, give me an example. What is showy about? I did see it. It didn't impress me a lot. I like the fact that they start rolling the titles about 7/8 of the way through the movie.
That part I love. I
that
think
was
that
very
part
cute.
Was
they start rolling the titles as though it's the end of the movie. And
one of the few parts of the movie that is an unqualified triumph.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a great bit of comedy.
And that was cool, and maybe that's not the editor. But tell me, what was showy enough to attract your attention about the editing of Vice?
Well, I think often the editing sort of very violently shoves things down the audience's throat that I think we should be trusted to figure out for ourselves. Like, the scene where he's meeting with them, he has his first real meeting with George W. Bush, played by Sam Rockwell.
Yep.
And, as he kind of, says, all these quote-unquote right things to kind of get Bush where he wants him, like, oh, you're very different than your father, and all this stuff. Like, they intercut it with, like, images of fishing, and then the idea that, like, Dick Cheney's into fly fishing, and the way he's manipulating him is like getting a fish on a hook.
Okay,
and
I see.
Like,
yeah.
It's like, come on. Like, I mean, look, I mean, the past few years have proved that, there's no, I mean, the stupidity of, America cannot be underestimated. but I would hope that we're not quite that stupid. I mean, it's like, it's very, very much to me like, you know, in terms of the editing and the directing, you know, saying like, you know, like, look, we have this clever idea, and rather than letting you just watch the scene, we're just gonna, like, you know, spoon feed you that cool idea like you're a baby, and, you know, why don't you cry and just, you know, sit back and watch this, you know, didactic, you know, horrible, self-righteous piece of junk that is passing for a movie. I shouldn't go down that rabbit hole too much because I get hot under the collar talking about that movie. But
Well, but so teasing out the editing work on Black Klansman or The Favorite, I don't know necessarily. I mean, I thought the movies, both of them, flowed okay, except for, as I mentioned in a previous podcast, I thought that the direction of Black Klansman was clunky. Was that the editing? I doubt it. I think that was probably director's choice issues, but The Favorite really does flow well. And could I point to a specific scene change?
Of course,
where it was the magic of the decision of the editor that made me love the film? I don't know, man. How do you tease that out in that movie specifically? Can you?
I mean, you know, it's a movie that it's such a lavish production. It's so ambitious. It has so many characters.
It's true. That is correct.
Yeah. I mean, like, when I look at a movie like that, I think, okay, clearly it was a lot of work to edit this movie. But, you know, one editing thing I'm not a fan of in that movie is I wasn't into, like, the superimposition at the very end. That took me out of it a little bit.
Oh, okay. That bothered you
it did.
Where she's massaging.
Right. But aside from that, you know, in the best sense of it, I didn't really notice the editing. You know, it pretty much flows together seamlessly. And honestly, I think, well, that's what, you know, great editing is supposed to do. So, I mean, I think the fact that, I mean, I can't really point to any specific examples of great editing into that movie either, which speaks to the fact that it's really well edited. You know, I mean, there's a reason they call it the invisible art. You know, I'd be very comfortable with that winning best editing, and I think it has a shot. Yeah.
I would too. And I guess at one moment when I guess I was watching it the second time, I flashed on the idea that there are a lot, and I mean, it seems so superficial to say, but it's true. There were a lot of shots in that movie from all kinds of different angles.
Oh, yeah.
And all kinds of things are on display from wide to tight to strange trucking shots through the hallways, and I think a lot of it had to be shot by drone, and they mixed all this together and it coheres perfectly in my mind, but there was a lot of work, and my God, it would be overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
If I woke up one morning and thought, okay, we're on page 36 of the screenplay, and that means that we've got 111 shots we got to get today.
Right,
I mean, I would stay in bed. It's just so horrible.
No, it's a Herculean task to make sense of all of that.
To make sense of it, exactly.
Yeah, and yet, you know, I mean, somehow it's a movie that, you know, certainly it appeals to people like you and me, but I think it appeals to kind of a general movie-going audience as well. You know, I mean, I saw it at the Laurelhurst. I don't think of that as an art house theater, and, you know, the theater was pretty full. You know, I mean, you know, the editing, I think, is what helps take, like, you know, Yorgos Lanthimos, who I think can be an off-putting filmmaker sometimes to people because he has such a specific, eccentric vision. I think somehow the editing helps him retain who he is, because this movie certainly feels like a lot like The Lobster, for instance, and yet like kind of like it's so like smoothly and beautifully assembled that, you know, I would, you know, venture to say that almost anyone could understand it.
Can we go out on a limb and say we think that one's going to win Best Editing? And I think that makes a certain. I mean, you've convinced me that's going to win.
I think it's so hard to.
I know.
It's hard to call, but
Sure.
I think. I mean, I don't know. This is a tough category for me. I think I could make arguments for Black Klansman, The Favorite, or Vice, but I mean, I think of the movies here, I think The Favorite is the best liked, and so I think I think it's got an edge. So, but let's before we wrap up, let's briefly talk about cinematography. I mean, this is a fascinating category to say the least. I mean, I actually think I've seen all these films except Never Look Away, because it hasn't opened in Portland yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think Roma seems like the obvious choice to win. It has big, beautiful, widescreen, epic movie compositions. I think, but certainly we talked about the fisheye lenses and The Favorite. I mean, that's some pretty iconic bold cinematography right there. Cold War, which I've actually seen twice because I enjoyed it so much. I mean, that's a great example, I think, of a movie where it's shot in black and white. It's it's very kind of unshowy, straightforward, kind of crisp compositions. Yet it's really, really beautifully done, and it's really nice high contrast black and white, like very like ivory whites, very deep shadowy blacks. It's really something to behold. But I mean, I think Roma stands out on this list. It's perhaps the most attention getting, because you see shots in that movie, like a shot at the climax where the camera follows the main character as she dives into the ocean, and like kind of it's like a tracking shot, maybe not the right way to describe it, but sort of a tracking shot moving along the waves as she moves further out to sea, and just moments like that stick out in people's minds, I think will.
And how do you think they shoot something like that? Were there rails somehow put out there, or were they actually using a diver to?
I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, I know on films, kind of waterlogged films like Dunkirk and Titanic, you had people, I think, like wearing wetsuits and stuff so they could actually stand, deep in the water holding the camera. So maybe it was that. But honestly, I mean, I look at, some shots and indeed a lot of the movies in this category, and I think like, wow, God, I don't know how they got that. I mean, because, the people who are nominated here, I mean, they're all masters of the craft. I mean, honestly, it's very hard to argue with any of these nominations. I mean, I think anyone who listened to our Star Wars Born podcast is familiar with our misgivings about that film, but it looked great,
And I've read in the past that a smart director defers to the DP, director of photography, all the time, because that person is going to be able to know what lens, to know what lighting is going to work, to create the proper mood. When in doubt, ask him or her what to do.
Totally,
It's not up for best photography, and I think it's up for best design. Is Mary Poppins? Did you see it?
Oh, yes, I did. Yeah.
And
I really enjoyed that movie. Yeah.
I love that movie. I thought Emily Blunt was great. I thought the plot was hackneyed. It wasn't a work of genius by any means, but it created a fantasy world by using 2D as opposed to 3D animation and mood that I'm not sure what processes they use. I almost buy a book one of those coffee table books, like the
Yeah.
making of 2001 Space Odyssey or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would like to see a production book about this Mary Poppins movie because it was so beautiful on the big screen.
It was.
This film.
It was.
It
There's a
knocked me
romanticism
out.
even to the scenes that are just kind of normal London.
Yeah.
With all the street lamps and the lamp lighters, in the darkness, dancing and singing.
And
Triple Little Light,
rooftops,
fantastic. Yeah, the rooftops,
the mist in the air in the park.
Yes, yeah.
The level of brilliance among those creative, artistic types in Hollywood is just beyond belief. And now, I guess with computers, they have everything they need to make that vision live.
Right. Well, I remember, Janusz Kaminski, who, for anyone listening who doesn't know, is Steven Spielberg's longtime cinematographer. He shot Ready Player One, and that's a film that's largely computer generated. And he said, I think maybe as cinematographers we worry about we're losing control of our art, because
you
can. A lot of this stuff is being made in a computer.
Yes.
Like Life of Pi and Avatar, each one best cinematography, but there's so much CGI in those films.
Right.
Where does the cinematography end, and where do the special effects begin?
Yeah,
you have to
what
ask
was
the question.
actually in the background but a green screen, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
oh my God, that seems probably really true.
Right, because this isn't like, like on Interstellar, Christopher Nolan and Hoyte van Hoytema going to Iceland and, taking an IMAX camera and passing Iceland off as an alien planet, this is stuff being created in the ether, and it's like, I don't know, it's a kind of fascinating no man's land, but, honestly, we're getting a lot of beautiful results, Gravity won Best Cinematography. I think that was a very well-deserved Oscar. That movie looks astonishing, I think.
Well, those people were held aloft by strings, a lot of that is just like they had to erase a lot of the suspension devices to give that sense of weightlessness. I don't, and herein it's just total guesswork on my part because I don't have any inside information, but is it possible that the director of photography was there making sure that those motions read as believable in terms of weightlessness, for example?
That's a great point. We shouldn't underestimate the fact that even if you're doing it in front of a green screen, the simple act of shooting the actors is that's an immense task in and of itself. Even if the line is blurry ultimately.
Right, and maybe another sense that you have to tap into as a DP to ensure believability when you're in this hangar-like barn of a studio with nothing but a green wall and your actors.
Right.
I don't know. You have to make sure that the lighting, I would think, of the people that are literally there is going to somehow blend with the background, that kind of thing. I don't know.
Returning to Mary Poppins Returns, how do you shoot, Emily Blunt, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and those kids in a way where they can be, believably kind of dropped into this animated fantasy? That's hard work. Exactly.
And wherein does that, ultimately, I suppose, with the director himself or herself, but where does the responsibility really lie for having that be flawless? And in that movie, in my opinion, it really was flawless.
I agree. Yeah. And that's, that's the cinematographer in that film was Dion Beebe, who won an Oscar for Memoirs of a Geisha. So he knows his stuff. He knows how to work with special effects heavy productions because Unfortunately for him, he was on Green Lantern. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a shame that film isn't nominated for more.
I don't understand. What is it? Just because it's a sequel to an iconographic movie, and it wasn't with Julie Andrews? You know.
I don't know. I mean, I just think in the, people can, disagree in the comments section if that is their want, but I just think there's a real bias against kind of mainstream, big budget, crowd pleasing movies at the Academy. Like, I think, like for a movie to really get the nomination, get some big nominations, it's got to be something like Mad Max Fury Road, where you have, just tons and tons of critics writing, about how this isn't just entertainment, this is high art, and I feel like, I wish the Academy would recognize that, both art and entertainment they're two sides of the same coin, like I think, I mean, the Favorite, I mean, I could call that a very highbrow film. That raises,
I would say so.
Yeah, and yet it's entertaining as well. It's funny. I mean, it's a good time at the movies, even if there's some points that are by design, make you cringe.
Yeah, I mean, it's also an unsettling movie in a way.
And it's meant to be,
Yeah.
That's what he wanted, and it's very effective at that.
And maybe that element of unsettlingness is lacking in Mary Poppins Returns, and I guess it really is somehow not in that movie.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, the past few, Best Picture winners. Last year, The Shape of Water, Moonlight before that, Spotlight before that, Birdman before that, 12 Years a Slave before that, Argo before that, those movies, are very wildly in quality, in my opinion, to say the least.
Oh, yes.
But one thing they all have in common is I think they all fit umbrella of that dreaded two-word phrase, serious films. I think those are films like, like an Academy member can vote for and be like, well, I didn't, besmirch my organization,
right. Because ultimately this is an art.
Yes.
So
yeah.
It has to be art.
Yeah.
Whatever else. It can't be just commercial.
Right.
Right. It's easy to imagine that that's the way things play.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't get Christmas cards from those people in Brentwood or wherever.
Right. Me neither. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I feel like I probably a lot of my theories about the way they think and operate are crackpot. But I have been watching for a long time, and patterns emerge. Sometimes those patterns get broken up, but a lot of them persist, and I mean, and I would add, I've grown very cynical about the Oscars over the years.
That has to happen. That's inevitable.
It is inevitable, but at the same time, I mean, for those of us who love movies, I mean, it is our Super Bowl. It is the big ritual around which everything pivots, and for all my cynicism about some of the choices they made in the nominations, I'm excited, and I'm certainly curious to see how this hostless ceremony will play out.
And how ever uneven the quality of the product is, and it is uneven. There is in the film industry and identified by the Oscars, there is brilliance there.
There is.
True brilliance. And it's nourishing to be the witness to such brilliance.
It is. I mean, this is a celebration.
Yeah.
I mean, and even, we're not going to get into them today, but, even seeing like who gets nominated for sound mixing and sound editing is exciting because some of these movies have really great sound. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, First Man and Roma have great sound. It's exciting. I mean, this is it can't be said enough. Filmmaking is a team sport, and it's great to see so many different people on the proverbial team get celebrated.
Right. And that's why those films cost millions of dollars, because they're they phone up maybe through their agent or however they make contact. They're finding the very, very best audio people, the very best lighting people, the best set decorators, everybody. I mean, that is a gift to everybody.
It is. And as a side note, I always find it funny, like, when I'll be talking about some movie and I'll say, oh, it's a low-budget movie, it only cost $2 million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like everything is on a whole different scale.
I know that.
Well, I think we should probably wrap it up. If you like this podcast, please click thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at T.H.O Movie Reviews. And please check out all the great reviews and content we have at THOMovieReviews.wordpress.com. Once again, I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, here with Jim Newman at Rose City Coffee Co., Brooklyn Park. And from all of us here at T.H.O Movie Reviews, we'll see you on the red carpet.